My name is Kent, and I'm a volunteer for the Park Service. And right now we're standing inside the factory building at Annaberg Plantation, which at its height was the largest and most successful of the sugar operations on St. John. Sugar is made from sugar cane, which is a crop, and it looks sort of like real tall grass, and maybe later we can get a picture of it. It is about 16 feet tall, and the base looks a little bit like bamboo. Now, the cane is grown in this area in terraces, on the slopes, and almost everywhere where there isn't a road or a structure. After the cane matures, it is cut with a machete-like instrument called a cane knife, and it's curved on the end. The sugar cane is gathered and it is sent down to the factory either by a donkey cart or an ox cart, or sometimes it's carried by enslaved laborers, and often it was slid down the slopes, all these mountainous slopes, and that was called shooting the cane. There were wooden platforms set up, and you could just bundle the cane and push it down to the factory. Now, the first step after cutting the cane and bringing it to the factory is crushing the stalks. What we are trying to do is remove the cane juice or sap or the liquid that's inside any growing plant. When we extract the liquid, we then are able to apply heat and boil it and eventually purify the cane juice, and at the end of the process, if all goes well, it will crystallize into sugar crystals, and this is the sugar cane we're all so familiar with. The Europeans in the 18th, 19th centuries had a tremendous appetite for cane sugar because prior to that it was only obtained in the Orient, in islands of Indonesia and Malaysia for the most part. But Columbus, on his second voyage to the New World, brought a variety of plants to see how they would grow in the Caribbean. And one that did succeed more than any was sugar. So sugar immediately took hold in the Caribbean and became the #1 cash crop. On St. John, we grew sugar mainly because not much else would grow. We're on volcanic, mountainous terrain without much topsoil and primitive agricultural methods. There was no such things as plows. There wasn't any scientific farming. The soil was not enriched. It wasn't allowed to lay fallow. The Europeans strictly wanted to grow as much cane as possible, extract the sugar, and when it ran out, then that would be the end of it. So in this factory building, we had what is known as the boiling bench along one whole wall. Now, the boiling bench here at Annaberg is a double bench. When the factory was built, we had two identical sections. The process started in the middle with a big iron copper-lined pot called a clarifier, and the cane juice would go into the factory in troughs, either from the windmill or the animal mill, and it would flow into this large pot called the clarifier. At one end of each production line there was a fire, and nearest to the fire was a small boiling pot, and then there were 3 other pots between the one near the fire and the clarifier. And the liquid went into the clarifier, and the fire heated the liquid a small amount. We didn't try and boil this. The liquid was full of impurities. It had vegetable matter from the crushings that had to be removed. There were two enslaved workers with long ladles and stirring spoons, and as the fire let its heat underneath this pot, quicklime would be thrown into the liquid, and these vegetable impurities would stick to the lime and rise to the surface where it could be skimmed off. The skimmings from the first big pot were saved, and those were used to feed animals. Later, as the impurities were skimmed off, they were saved to make a mash and distill in order to make rum. We'll get to that later. So we had one fire under all the pots. Really, you have to imagine a tunnel under the 5 pots, and there were vents where doors could be opened and shut to control the drafting, and also the heat was controlled by its proximity to the fire. Fire, of course, was fed by burning bagasse or dried cane stalks from previous harvests. After about an hour or an hour and a half, as the heat raised the temperature in the cane juice and impurities were skimmed off, the liquid, which had been reduced a bit due to evaporation, was transferred to the next pot in line, which was a little bit smaller. Now, we're a little bit closer to the heat source of the fire, and there's a little more draft, so this pot is going to heat the liquid to a hotter degree than in the clarifier. A similar operation goes in the second pot, where impurities are skimmed off and saved, and they will be made into rum eventually. And this would go another hour, hour and a half or so. By this time, more cane juice would be dumped into the clarifier, because now that was empty. So we have a production line going. As the juice is transferred from pot